Welcome back to Rivonomics. I'm your host Salahuddin. Today we are talking into one of those ideas that sounds simple on the surface but quietly explains why your work or financial life feels like effort without progress. And to explain it, we are borrowing a classic concept called the Pareto Principle. If you have ever said, I have worked really hard and still feel like nothing much has actually changed. I'm doing everything possible and somehow getting nowhere nearer to my goal, objective, or target. Then hats off. Yes, it's not just you, it's a pattern. And you are about to understand why. So let's start with Pareto Principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. The law of the vital few, or in modern language, most things don't matter as much as we think they do. The Pareto rule says 20% of causes produce 80% of the effects. And you can see it everywhere. 20% of highways carry 80% of the traffic. 20% of customers generate 80% of business revenue. So, what does this has to do with mapping how we think, how we work, and how we make money or build stable wealth? 20% of the inputs create 80% of the outputs. And today, we are applying this principle on our macro and micro lenses. Most people live life through what is known as a micro lens mode. Micro mode is answering emails, fixing problems, attending requests, handling small tasks, paying bills, reacting to crises, and basically repeating life on loop. Micro mode feels productive because it's constant. It's about activity. It's about movement. It's, look, I'm doing things. And yet, for many people, micro effort results in very small long-term improvement. It only creates about 20% of long-term improvement. That means you can spend your whole life grinding, reacting, tracking, and adjusting tiny matters and still feel stuck. That's because micro effort mostly focuses on immediate maintenance, not long-term change. Think about it. You can spend 2 hours sorting receipts, but does that build wealth? You can spend 3 hours reorganizing your desk, but does that change your future? You can answer 50 emails only to wake up tomorrow to 50 more. Micro mode never ends. It loops, it repeats, it regenerates like a video game enemy. So here's why Pareto walks back in, taps you on the shoulder and whispers, hey, maybe effort is not the problem. Maybe perception is. Meanwhile, 20% macro thinking. That's where the brilliance happens. Macro lens mode is where the 20% that really matters lives. Macro thinking isn't about reacting. It is all about designing. It is having strategy, designing systems, setting boundaries, creating frameworks, establishing rules, having long-term plans, building habits instead of reminders, making decisions that remove future reoccurring decisions and actions. These are not things you do all day. They are things you do once and then they keep advancing you. Instead of constantly solving small problems, macro thinking asks, what would prevent this problem from happening again? Instead of using time as the main tool, macro thinkers use structure. And here's why Pareto becomes powerful. Macro thinking, the 20%, produces around 80% of long-term progress. One good macro decision can eliminate dozens of micro hustling. Let's do a few fast comparisons. In money matters, micro concern is like tracking expenses every day, stressing over small purchases. Macro concern is like creating automated systems for saving, investing, and recurring bills, turning one decision into permanent resolvability. In matters related to tasks, micro fix is like to-do lists, reminders, sticky notes. Macro fix is like a weekly planning ritual, a rule like no commitments before 10 a.m. or batching tasks so your brain doesn't context switch every 5 seconds. In relationships matters, micro fix is like fixing fights individually, explaining again and again, trying to remember emotional details. Macro fix is like a single boundary rule, like we pause arguments and revisit them after 30 minutes. This eliminates dozens of emotional explosions. In learning new skills, micro fix is like random videos, random tutorials, trying everything. Macro fix is like choosing one structured method and strategically sticking to it. See the pattern? Micro reacts, macro pre-designs. Micro fixes symptoms, macro fixes root cause. Macro is equal to leveraging, micro is equal to laboring. Micro thinking asks, how do I get paid? Macro thinking asks, how do I build a system that generates payments? Shift from task to structure, salary to scalability, time to leverage, effort to ownership. Micro living purchases from emotion, urgency, convenience, impulse. Macro living purchases from strategy, long-term value, return of investment, positioning. A worker asks, what do I need to do today? An architect asks, what system can I create today that eliminates or delegates future repeatable doing? Micro thinking collapses into urgency. Macro thinking stretches time. They understand cycles, trends, socio-economic tides, cultural momentum, compounding. Here's the Pareto takeaway. 20% macro thinking creates 80% of life results, and 80% micro effort creates only 20% progress. Most people live in micro mode, reacting, fixing, repeating, hoping someday things will eventually and naturally just work out. Why do most people prefer micro? Because micro gives instant feedback and our brains love dopamine. Crossing off a checklist feels rewarding even if the checklist majorly leads nowhere, whereas macro thinking doesn't always feel productive in the moment because you're planning, thinking, designing, questioning, choosing structure, laying strategy. It feels slow, abstract, and sometimes overwhelming. But once it is applied and executed, it pays net profit and bonuses forever. That is the Pareto difference. So, instead of asking, what do I need to work on? Ask what decision, system, or rule would make this problem resolved permanently. Because your life doesn't need more effort, it needs more architecture. 20% macro design creates 80% of ease and progress in our micro mode living. A small number of macro decisions can dramatically simplify, ease, and stabilize a large volume of micro activity. Some high leverage examples. A single macro decision removes dozens of daily micro decisions and frictions. Defining who does what at a macro level delegates repeated micro follow-ups and rework. One macro setup saves hundreds of micro hours over time. Choosing one core priority at the macro level eliminates scattered micro effort and creates smoother daily execution. At the end, the world looks less complex because the patterns behind the noise becomes maneuverable, whereas 80% micro effort creates only 20% change in our macro living, no matter how hard and strongly we try. Micro effort does produce macro effects, but sparsely. It's slow, indirect, and low leverage compared to macro first moves. For example, years of micro execution slowly reveal patterns which eventually allow someone to design a macro system or framework. Small, consistent micro savings can accumulate into enough capital to enable a macro move, investment, or business. Repeatable micro content creation may slowly build credibility and data, which later enables a macro platform or brand. Fixing many small operational issues can expose a structural bottleneck, prompting a macro redesign later. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, ask, is this a micro task or a macro system? Then ask, what one decision, rule, or structure would prevent this from repeating? Think of one repeating stress in your life, a monthly problem, a pattern, a repeating loop. Now ask if this had a rule, system, boundary, habit, or automation. Would it disappear? If the answer is yes, you just found a macro point. Write it down. That one change may save you hours or even years of unnecessary micro struggle. Most people fail because they do 80% micro tasks and expect 80% macro results. But the world rewards leverage. And leverage comes from designing instead of reacting, systems instead of repetition, boundaries instead of chaos, macro thinking instead of micro hustle, leverage instead of loading, delegate instead of dragging. Instead of asking, how can I do more? Ask, how can I build something once and use it forever? Examples: templates, memberships, software, courses, franchisable models, licensing frameworks, investments. Anything that works again and again without repeating effort. Micro thinkers ask, what is the reward today? Macro thinkers ask, what is the reward after prolonged strategy? This one shift alone separates regular earners from wealth builders. Though both lenses matter, micro keeps you alive, macro helps you thrive. The micro maintains what the macro creates, and the macro handles what the micro cannot. Macro builds the world, micro operates it. But if you only live micro, you will always trade time for money. And if you learn macro, you will eventually trade systems for money. And that right there is the difference between money making and wealth building. The world pays for your effort, but it rewards for your system and structure. Think big, design smart, act little, repeat less, achieve more. And remember, momentum doesn't come from doing more. It comes from thinking and designing better. I'm Salahuddin, this is Rivonomics, and you are awakening.